Hi everybody, Bobby Ogilvy, Project Manager and Professional Coach. Today's question: what is the difference between how a manager of a team needs to lead versus the manager of an organization? You might think of it as managerial leadership versus organizational leadership. I'll break this down a bit more. Just to clarify here, you would never hear the term managerial leadership. That's not a specific leadership style. That's normally, if you were taking a course on this, managerial leadership would be surveying different management and leadership systems. Organizational leadership, again, dealing with a certain scope, but it's not dealing with anything specific. But anyway, let's break this down a bit. The way I frame it at this point would be that in the realm of managing a team, you're still dealing with one-to-one relationships. And really, this is the heart of good coaching. And this is the heart of also good training and transformation, good development, right? It starts at a individual person level or a one-to-one relationship level. Managers need to get really good at that. This also then naturally extends into the communications and operations, right? They get good at knowing what someone's strengths are and bringing out the best of them. That then also means they get good at execution, at knowing where to put the right effort, how many people you need on something, and getting better at resource management, timelines, estimates, all this kind of practical day-to-day stuff. And that might seem weird to think that, training and execution are so similar, but in that sense they are, right? Both are trying to deal with short-term, what am I going after, and where do I need to put an effort to get that, except for one is very outcome focused in terms of some work deliverable, and one is a bit more kind of learning and skill focused. And if you know what you're doing, you can actually kind of blend the two. Particularly experiential learning very much has that focus, right? If you think of it from an operational sense, it's not that a business wants to arbitrarily put knowledge in your head, or even that you want to put arbitrarily put knowledge in your head. It's that you're trying to develop or enhance a skill. And actually, even the way we price certain things reflects that, right? That's why we might pay, only $20, $30 for a book, but we might pay $500 or $1,000 for a good training course, because you get way more value out of that $1,000 course versus that $30 book in terms of your practical skills and your help and the amount of effort you sink in and the frameworks you're dealing with and the other experts you get to tap into, right? Okay, and so let's go on the other end now. So again, that's about the one-to-one ability of a manager and to influence and bring out the best in others and deal with execution and operations. On the other end, organizational leadership, what is that about? That's about culture and change management. A lot of that is really deriving from strategy, the business strategy, the organizational strategy you're setting. And where is that coming out of? Well, hopefully it's coming out of a good sense of what the market forces in play are, what trends you're seeing, what opportunities you're seeing, what strategy niche you've carved out for yourself. What are you going after? How are you going to differentiate yourself? Differentiation, again, that's another important term that relates to competitive advantage. What else do we need to know in this sense? From internal factors that could be driving this, it could be numbers or KPIs you need to hit. So in a let's call it a bootstrapping kind of startup sense, you'll probably hear terms like burn rate and runway. And just to clarify what that means, burn rate is how much you're burning money. Normally you think of it, let's say, in a per month kind of amount, and then runway is to say, this is like a simple y equals mx plus b thing. So you have this much money left, you're burning money at such a monthly rate, therefore you have this many months left. Easy, right? And in that way you can think of it as until death date. I'm burning money at the rate of $20,000 per month. I have $160,000. Therefore, I'm going to die in 8 months. If nothing happens, right? So that's kind of what you're fighting against. And then eventually that gets long enough, and you have enough handle of cash flow and income. Or really, once your revenues exceed your expenses, then that's not really the salient way to do things. But you might still be reverse engineering it to say, well, I want to be doing my next financing round by this point or that point. So you're still trying to hit certain targets. Back to the kind of efficiency number and of things, it could also be dealing with KPIs. So it could be that you're trying to get to a certain level of efficiency, you're trying to reduce turnover down to a certain amount, you're trying to enhance some kind of process or internal thing, and those could also be again, that's a type of strategy. That's a way of looking at resources. It's just a touch on what scorecards are. Is they're helping map out a bunch of different areas of your business. Not just how you're selling, but how you're dealing with customers and how you're dealing with internal talent and how you're kind of improving processes or innovating over time. And the good thing about scorecards is that because you're measuring a whole bunch of things, they tend to kind of lump and categorize them together, but invert them. So if things are good, it'll be green, or it won't pop up. And then if they're somewhat problematic, they might be yellow. If they're really problematic, they're like red. So you can look at these scorecards and look at the top 5 or 10 red dots and say, well, of these 50, 100 things I'm measuring, well, these are the 5 I care about, right? That's why scorecards are good. They draw your attention to the gap areas you need to be focusing on. You need to focus your finite resources and effort on, right? What else about organizational leadership? So contrasted here where we mentioned, managing teams was about the one-to-one relationships. This is about the one-to-many relationships of these leaders, right? So on the one-to-one end of things, you can still deal with someone directly. So you can communicate with them directly. You can clarify yourself. You can have had direct relationships, built relationships with all these people, right? On the one-to-many, you can't do all that. So you're partly trying to clarify and propagate your values, right? So, and not just about you particularly, and those will be pretty persistent, but the values of what we need next, right? So it could be that you're going from maybe an engineering culture into a sales culture, and so the values you're trying to promote are about energy and new opportunities and scanning for new partnerships, scanning for new verticals you could go into, and it's about that end of things, right? Now, or it could be you're getting very process and compliance oriented, and it's about quality, and it's about repeatability and reliability, and it's about being seen as this reliable, high caliber, premium market player, right? And how do you transmit that into your culture? How do we start to shift people's thinking and shift the culture of the organization towards that? And so back to the one to many end of things, it's like, for the people that I haven't had direct one-to-one contact with, for all those other people, how do I share and propagate that message? How do I shift our mind and our attitude, and really our values, or I should say, bring out those values towards that? That's really what they're working with, right? And in that way, someone, as much as they're probably their bread and butter is going to be one or the other, they may use both of these skills, which is to say, even as a team, let's say team project manager, to some degree you're still upholding culture, which is permeating out to others, and the opposite is true too. You could be a C-level person and you're mostly doing this bigger influence, cultural influence KPI, where's my head at strategy stuff, but you also still need to work with that one-to-one relationship and that team of those, the managers of managers, right? Or whatever team of people you find directly around you. So it's not that you can't have one and dismiss the other, but you can see how these are kind of different beasts. So just to recap, the team managers are focused on the one-to-one relationships, and it could be around training or execution, but there's something direct and now about it. The organizational leaders, organizational managers are trying to deal with big culture change, big strategy change, and all the things they need to measure and look at that are part of getting that out there, making those changes happen. And it is a different beast, the one-to-one, the one-to-many. So I hope you guys understand these two kind of scopes of leadership and management a bit better, and you can put this to use in your organizations. I hope you learned something here. Again, Robert Ogilvy, Project Manager and Professional Coach. I'll talk to you guys again soon.